Good afternoon, welcome to Mead Live. My name is Richard Thompson, I am the editorial director of Mead, and we have a special broadcast of Mead Live today. We are looking at innovation, and in particular we are looking at how do you create a culture of innovation within your organisation or within a country. We have an excellent panel of experts to discuss this important topic with us today. On my right we have Salman Abdullah. Welcome, Salman. You are the Executive Vice President of Health, Safety, Sustainability, Environment and Quality at Emirates Global Aluminium.
That is correct.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
Next to Salman we have Suzanne Gandhi. You are the Head of Talent Management at the Dubai Multi-Commodities Centre, the DMCC.
Yes, thank you, Richard.
Welcome. And Wissam Adib, you are an advisor to the government here at the Prime Minister's office. Welcome, Wissam.
Thank you. Thanks, Richard.
So, you are all invited to take part in this conversation. You can submit questions or add your opinions using the screen in front of you. There is a field where you can send your comments in. Please join the discussion. It's a very, very important topic, and it goes right to the heart of government policy in the UAE, but also industrial policy and corporate policy in the region. I think I want to start, if I may, and perhaps Salman, I can start with you.
Sure.
Why is this important? Why are we talking about innovation?
Richard, in our view, in EGA, we are a huge industrial plant. We go out, we recruit the best of the people from around the world, and we bring them back to United Arab Emirates to leverage all that knowledge and expertise. If we do not have a culture, an atmosphere, an environment where people can spread their wings, then it's just like getting the best people and clipping their wings away. So they need to think openly, they need to be empowered that their ideas and any innovation they see closer to the shop floor, they can implement it without any...
So it's this notion of you're recruiting the best, and the best want to bring their ideas.
Correct.
But to get that from them, you have to give them the right
You have to give them the
environment.
correct forum, the correct vehicle, the correct transportation, and the empowerment that they unhindered deliver this continuous improvement on a continuous basis.
Okay, so that's why innovation is important to EGA. Wissam, from a government point of view, or from someone who is advising the government, why is it important to government to have innovation? Surely government is about stability and nothing changes.
Well, if you've been in the UAE any length of time, you'll know that it's a country where a lot of things are always changing. When a country such as the UAE has the ambition to be one of the best countries in the world, in such a short amount of time, they're not going to get there by just emulating what's been done elsewhere. What they want to do is they want to innovate, they want to find new solutions, better solutions, and ways to reach the top faster than it's ever been done before.
And is that for the purposes of just being more important globally, or is it about efficiency and having happier cities, or what exactly does it deliver to the government to be higher up the world rankings?
Well, the UAE leadership has always been about providing the best quality of life. And you can see now, in the last year and a half with the appointment of the Minister for Happiness, it's become really about making the UAE the happiest place on earth. And innovation feeds right into that. I mean, innovation is a tool that you can apply on a lot of different challenges and problems. And so whether you're innovating to become more efficient or whether you're innovating to improve the lives of people that you serve, it's really essential to becoming the best.
Okay, thank you. And Suzanne, the Dubai Multi-Commodities Centre, that is a free zone.
Yes.
That allows companies operating in the commodities space to provide them with the services and support they need. What does innovation mean to DMCC? Why are you guys talking about innovation?
Well, at DMCC, we find that innovation is important because it's what gives us our competitive advantage. DMCC, whilst our mission to be here is to increase foreign direct investment into Dubai, it is a global free zone, and it's the global #1 free zone. And in order to maintain that champion level, we have to continue to innovate, because if we don't, all our competitors will be looking to us, to what we're doing. And so we need to make sure that we stay one step ahead.
So it's about competitiveness.
It's absolutely
so
about
I
competitive
guess for all three
advantage.
of you, that's what you've said, really. It's
Yeah.
about competitiveness, whether it's getting the best out of people or making happier cities or competing with global rivals.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's about being competitive. We want to create innovative environments within our organisations. I'd like to know what each of you are doing to deliver this. Perhaps Susanna can start with you. So what are you doing, or what is DMCC doing to deliver this culture of innovation?
Well, there's actually three elements to our initiative on innovation. So the first element is our employees. And we have a top-down and a bottom-up approach there. So the top-down approach is that we have a leadership academy that all our leaders are going through. So we have the free zone, the commodities, and the property streams to DMCC, and everybody is going through the leadership academy together, because we will be stronger together and have to ensure that our leaders have the right tools as well as capabilities to continue to have that sustained competitive advantage. We also have the grassroots up on our employees, which is things like our employees having a voice, and that's done through an ideas management system.
Is that what in the old days might have been a suggestion scheme?
Yes,
Or
suggestion scheme. So we find that 25% of the ideas that are put forward are viable ideas that are considered to then be implemented, and we ensure that the employees who come up with the ideas are then on the project team to then implement those changes. And it's currently in the free zone, and it has allowed our employees who are working with our clients, our member companies every day, to make that whole client experience better. And that brings me on to the second stream of our innovation, and that is our member companies. So we've recently launched an suggestion scheme, as you say, ideas management for our member companies, of whom we have 13,000 member companies. So you can imagine the number of ideas that could be generated from there.
So DMCC is a free zone, so your member companies, that's essentially your customers, is it?
Yes. So our member companies, they come and they are licensed with DMCC, and they operate in the JLT area. And our member companies has some amazingly innovative ideas on not only how DMCC can provide a better service, but also how, as a free zone, everyone can work better together. Then the third element to innovation is how we've restructured the organisation, and we've recently, in our commodities stream, set up an innovation hub, which is what you might call a research and development team, where they're looking at where is the next story in commodities. How can DMCC provide a platform for people to trade on a global scale in the future? And always, again, trying to keep that one step ahead. But employee satisfaction and client satisfaction is ultimately our aim.
Just on the innovation hub, is that some sort of separate team of researchers and analysts, or is this a sort of space where employees and customers can come together for briefings or discussions? What is the hub?
It's actually both. So we have a dedicated team of employees who are tasked with that research and analysis, but also we have quite a what you call an open conversation with our member companies, but also we're getting out on a global stage and doing thought leadership programs. And our most recent one was Made for Trade, where we've been going around key countries within Europe and Asia to be thought leaders in trade for the future.
Okay, so we can come back to some of those lessons that you've taken from around the world. I think that might be quite an interesting area to discuss. But if I can move Salman to Emirates Global Aluminium. So I know that you also have a sort of employee suggestion program.
That's correct.
Is it similar to what Susanna just described?
Not very dissimilar. I think where we are different, that we've been doing this since 1979. Our suggestion schemes have evolved to a degree that we have to date something like in excess of 200,000 suggestions with a net audited saving of $70 million. I mean, this is published.
$70 million over what time
American
period?
dollars, yes. Yes, over this period of time.
Okay, so
since the beginning of
the suggestion program has saved $70 million. Wow.
And that is at two levels. One is at the employee level, where the employee himself identifies his environment, he goes to his supervisor, and there is a panel within the supervisory level, and they decide. At the next tier level, we have across teams. So you have different departments, different divisions where they collaborate, and of course, it's a bigger step of improvement and a bigger gain. And at this level, what we do, we actually share what the company is saving with the team. So this is the three steps.
So it's an incentivized suggestion scheme.
It's an absolutely
That's
incentivized.
That's really a sign of leadership taking innovation very seriously. I mean, the fact that you're measuring these savings and then announcing them,
Yes.
it shows that it's not just, you know...
No, it's not just a marketing,
it's not just a marketing
glossy
thing.
paper.
It's very serious.
It's audited as per the financial standards,
Wow.
and it's all recorded. And those savings from the area where the improvement is actually that is removed from the next year's budget. So it's a real thing which is happening. But also at the third level, and most people don't realize this, that UAE is doing an EGA is research and development, and we have our own proprietary, not just one, but number of technologies which we have successfully sold outside UAE, and it's a big revenue generator. It's not just that it has huge impact on P&L accounts, and also on our strategy of what we want to do.
That's quite an interesting thing for a you don't think of the GCC as being a centre for industrial proprietary technologies. So for EGA to be producing proprietary technology and exporting it or selling it, that's quite important, I think, for the region. Does that come out of, which came first? Was it this the suggestion program, or the culture of innovation, or does the being set up as a research hub
I think if we
become...
try to find the turning point, it originally started back in the early 80s as a suggestion scheme, and as these people grew with the company, this culture they brought up with them. I mean, for example, we have a large number of UAE nationals and expatriates who have crossed 25 years with the company. So this has come from grassroots upwards.
But is that from what I have seen, people hire in outside consultants to introduce innovation and change.
Yeah.
But you're saying actually it's been successful at EGA with people who are, I guess, emotionally bought into the company. They've been there for so long.
Emotionally, technically, and experience-wise, these are we are extremely privileged to. These are the industry experts. To give you a small example, I mean, if we have a big gas turbine installed, somebody like GE would come in, install it, and leave. But some of the innovation our team does on how you start it up, how do you maximize the efficiency, how you reduce the CO2, sometimes even breaks the nameplate rating of GE.
Oh, really?
And they are here locally available for you. And then they come back and learn from us. So this has been going on for a very, very long time.
And so how important, you talked about the incentivization, when people across the company can come up with suggestions that lead to savings, and that can be redistributed amongst the team. So for that kind of efficiency improvement, is that coming from the people who are directly working with the turbine, or is it coming from up on high?
At all levels. So as I explained, one is at the employee level, where he's controlling his sphere of influence. The next one is a team level, we go across. And the third one is at the corporate level, where you need massive research and development. So it goes both ways. The most important part is that the leadership and the shop floor are completely aligned. There is no disagreement. I mean, the leadership has such an important role to play in this, because without their consent and without their oversight and agreement, this will never nurture and never grow in a strong roots which it has today.
Okay, well, thank you. Congratulations on your success stories there. I would like to come back a bit later on. We on some of these broadcasts we've had GE and others talking about technological developments, big data and the industrial Internet of Things and digitalization. So perhaps we can explore some of those industrial trends a bit later on. Wissam, thank you for your patience whilst we've been talking at this end. So you're coming from a slightly different perspective. You're advising government, and so you're not producing product in the same way that an aluminium manufacturer is. What are you as an organisation, doing to build a culture of innovation?
A lot. I mean, government deals with some of the thorniest challenges out there. When you think about the kind of policy that government has to develop across healthcare, education, all the different services that government provides, and trying to anticipate also what's coming around the corner. It's no longer enough for government just to think about the challenges that are already there, but also to think about what's coming next. Add on top of that this ambition for us to be one of the leading countries in the world, and that's really a lot to think about. And so some of the things that the government does in innovation, and already you hear a lot about them, is, for example, the establishment of the Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Government Innovation. I mean, that's as clear a sign as any that government takes innovation very seriously. That His Highness would set up a center specifically about building capability around innovation in government, enabling innovation to take place, and supporting experimentation across government.
If I can, on those 3 points that you've just mentioned, the first one about building capability within government to innovate, what does that mean? What is capability? Is that about the speed? Is that about removing red tape or the speed of decision making, or what does the building capability involve?
A number of things. First of all, we create spaces where innovation can take place. So, for example, there's a very real physical space,
so this is
which is the innovation
center. Suzanne was talking about an innovation hub you referred to.
Almost, yes, but for government. So essentially where policymakers, frontline staff, even those who are affected by certain government policy can come together and think about how they can solve problems that government is facing.
So I guess this is, and so these are innovation spaces where people can come together, and it leads to what sort of suggestion programs, or what comes out of these discussions?
Various things. It really depends what we're trying to achieve. So, for example, and I know, Salman, we were talking earlier about kind of your experience having gone through the Government Accelerator, which is another kind of innovation space that we have. So sometimes it's about working towards solving a specific policy challenge. So whether it's about, improving road safety, or whether it's about improving healthcare outcomes. So sometimes we'll have a specific policy outcome, and then because of the role of the Prime Minister's office, we can then support the entities in terms of fast-tracking whatever decisions need to be made.
Is that the accelerators program
So
you're talking about, the fast-tracking?
So that's the accelerator program. That's one example. But in the Innovation Center itself, then you have areas where people can come together to brainstorm, to run hackathons, to run various design workshops. And this could be whether at the policy level, at the national KPI level, or even at the service level, where thinking can take place.
So I'm guessing, though, at government, though, you, as an outsider observing government, you have a lot of very well-educated, motivated, intelligent people setting ideas and policy, and then you have the frontline delivery of services. How do you ensure it gets from the hub, the brainstorming, ideas generation, into improving the functioning of cities, for example?
You do that by involving people at every level of the organization. Okay. So anywhere from the minister in charge of the government entity all the way down to the frontline staff. And what we've found is the more you can get those who are directly dealing with a problem to have a say in how it's solved, the better the outcomes are. So generally what we try to do is we try to work with people who are impacted by whatever it is that is being looked at, or who are there providing the service to solve that problem. We get them to develop the solutions that, or the innovations that will address that, and only then do we try to bring in more senior leadership to support, endorse, and then make sure that that gets implemented through.
Okay, and you said there were two other areas. So the first was building the capability.
So actually, along capability, I want to mention one other thing, which is there is an innovation diploma program actually, which has been run for the last 2 years, and part of that is graduating chief innovation officers as well as other people in positions of management that support innovation.
Was part of the innovation, the national innovation strategy was to have chief innovation officers
Correct.
at every government department.
Yes, correct.
Or so something like 44 or something to be correct.
Yes.
So how is that going, that program? I mean, do we now have 44 chief innovation officers across
Exactly. So that was a very immediate goal of setting up the center, to have those counterparts at the entities who can then have the capability to grow innovation within their entities, and then as well become kind of the counterparts for the Center for Government Innovation across government.
So, is every innovation officer across the different government departments, are they the same? They've got the same mandate, or it depends on which department they've joined?
It's different for each entity, so it really depends. And by the way, these are people who have kind of their full-time positions, but in addition to that, they assume this role for supporting innovation.
So if I'm an outside, a lot of Mead's audience are people that are looking for business opportunities or how they can engage with government or big organisations in the region. So if I've developed, say, an app that provides some, I don't know, healthcare service, and I want to get to the Dubai Healthcare Authority or the Health Authority of Abu Dhabi, do I go to the Chief Innovation Officer? What do I do with my...
Well, the role of the Chief Innovation Officer really is to enable innovation to take place. Those who are responsible for whatever policy or service is being provided are still responsible for them. So, if your app delivers a specific service, you'd want to go to the department or person responsible.
So the Chief Innovation Officer is about looking at the organisation and creating this culture.
It's an internal-facing function. Now, one thing I'll mention, Richard, very quickly. So we talked a little bit about building innovation capability within government, but there's also innovation at the national level. So you have, for example, in 2015, the Prime Minister's Office launched the Science, Technology and Innovation Policy, which really addresses kind of how the country is innovating as well. One of the things that we look very closely at, for example, is the Global Innovation Index and how well we do as a nation on that. So that's I wanted to provide another how
well are we doing as a nation?
We're doing a lot better year on year. 2 years ago we were ranked 47th, and in 2017 we were ranked 35th. So we're moving at a pretty fast pace forward.
And is there a target? Is top 10 by 2020?
The target is always to be among the best in the world. Okay. So definitely we're heading in that direction.
So what has taken? Yeah. So you've gone from you said 47 to 35. So that's 12 places. Why has the UAE gone up 12 places in the past 12 months? What has been the key to that?
The same reason that we just heard from Salman, that people are innovating so well at EGA, because leadership takes it very seriously. Okay. It's a number we track very closely. There are sub-indicators within that show how well the UAE is supporting innovation, and that cuts across really a number of things, from the economic sector to the research sectors.
So we've heard from Salman and from Suzanne, and I guess from you as well, about the getting the ideas from the shop floor, if you like, but you've just explained the importance of the leadership setting the direction. So perhaps, Suzanne, if I come to you, how does it come together? How important is that relationship between enabling the shop floor and providing top-down direction?
I think the key there is that there has to be the buy-in at all levels, that the ultimate innovation is our goal, because when we look at DMCC as an example, back in 2015, we were discussing the need for our leaders to be equipped with the right tools and understanding of how to get the most from their employees to innovate solutions for the organization and beyond. And of course, then that became part of our strategy, and then out of that became our Leadership Academy, which has a whole module on innovation in action. And what that does is it enables leaders to identify that everyone has the capability to innovate, but how to maximize that everyone has a slightly different way of innovating. And so if someone seems a little unconventional, not to disregard it, and to actually embrace that, because the different styles of innovation, when brought together, can then really complement each other. So if the leaders are equipped with the right tools and understanding of how to get the most out of their employees, it becomes a team goal. And by working on it as a team, you can do leap innovation, which is where organizations have catapulted themselves forward with unique ideas, whether it's in the technology space or in the environment sustainability space, but also the incremental innovation that we do every day. And that's for, again, our leaders to listen to the voice of our employees.
What is more important for a business? Is it that incremental, like continual improvement, or is it the great leaps forward that provide some big jump?
If I may, I mean, all of it. One feeds.
You're not allowed to say that.
Well, I mean, I always look at this way, that if you take a bag of money and distribute it, it goes down. But if you take knowledge and distribute it, it goes up exponentially. And this is what innovation is. It's knowledge sharing on an individual basis, on a team basis, and at a corporate level. And the role leadership plays in this, I mean, I cannot emphasize enough. I've been in industry for the last 30 years. You will stifle, you can have all the policy, procedures, colorful boards around, but if there is the slightest indication, posture-wise or language-wise, or something that leadership says, which is not aligned what the policy on the board is saying, you've definitely killed it. Yes. And nobody will tell you it's dead, but you feel it because the feedstock of the suggestion starts drying away.
So the leaders, it's important that they walk the talk.
Absolutely. I mean, to give you on the academic side an example, I was reading something from Professor Ben Bryant from IMD, and Professor Ben Bryant, he's an expert in culture of innovation, and his view is these are all important ingredients. You should have the policy, you should have the communication, procedures, standard operating procedures, that's all correct. But the biggest impact on any organization, on any country, on any continent is the leader. And it's just some of the simplest words can make a change. Now, on the practical side, that was the academic side, on the practical side, we have been discussing with GE a certain project of environmental importance. And we've been talking about it for a long time, until we got involved with the government accelerator program. And I kid you not that His Excellency, His Highness himself, the Prime Minister, sat down with us, like we are sitting around here, and he was so vividly, so involved and invested in it, that what are you guys doing? How are you doing? How does it impact the air quality index of the United Arab Emirates? And then he gave us a deadline, and you know what? It happened. Okay. And it is so clear all the way from the shop, from the top leadership up to the shop floor. It was absolutely aligned. I mean, I live in Dubai. I know the speed of how things work. This was 10 times faster than that.
That's a fantastic example of how that combination from top to bottom works. Okay, thank you all for your input so far. We're about halfway through the programme, and we have received some questions, which we'll now turn to questions. If you would like to get involved in this conversation, and I'm sure that a lot of you are very actively engaged in driving innovation in your organisations, please send in your questions or comments, and we can discuss them. Now, we have an interesting one here. This is from somebody who works in the government sector in the oil and gas industry. I won't name names or organisations, but one of the things that drives organisations to sustainable innovation is competition, says this person. In our business, such internal competition is very limited, especially government and semi-government sectors like oil and gas. How can we as monopolists, so I guess we're talking about government run sectors, how can we as monopolists still create that competitiveness that will force people to look at innovation and improvement as a must for survival? So we've talked about competition externally. Perhaps, Suzanne, if I start with you, that need for internal competition or some incentive to change.
I think with when we say competition, when we're looking externally, absolutely, competition is key. We need to be one step ahead. But when we're looking internally, I'd rather use the term collaboration, because you can't, if you really want to stay ahead, often you can't do it alone. And so when it comes to government or semi-government organizations or industries, what we've done, again, at DMCC as an example is that we actually have groups for different industries to come together and collaborate, because there is obviously the ultimate commercial element to the competition, but also you can certainly learn from each other as you move through. So I would definitely say the key is actually open dialogue and making it more of a collaborative process when it comes to innovating.
So the questioner is asking here about competition. Now, when we have talked previously, we've talked about removing silos within organizations. Do you think that the questioner here is actually talking about silos?
I think this is a brilliant question. I love this question because we have experienced this. I mean, today we are at an international level, competing with the competition. But what were we doing 20 years ago when we were a small organization? And the best example I can give you is when you are about to go for a marathon. You don't want to win it. It's you against you. Even if you're a monopolistic company, if you're the only type on planet Earth, you have no competition. But you have a set of KPIs which you achieved in 2016. Was it the amount of production? Was it the environmental impact? Was it the number of incidents you had? It's your data. Beat that. That is your competition. So it's you against you. It's a lap time. You continually try to improve your own lap time.
But not to do it on your own. So as Suzanne
you
is
do
saying,
it collaboratively. But I think the questioner wanted to know, what if I'm a monopolistic? I have no competition. How do I'm going to benchmark myself against? Well, benchmark it against your own self and continuously improve on that.
Maybe if I could jump in, I would maybe disagree a little bit with the premise of the question, because in government, almost by definition, government is monopolistic in the sectors in which they operate. But government always finds a way to benchmark its performance against either other countries, other governments, sometimes against the private sector. And if you can't find the benchmark kind of at a macro level, then you can drill down and find sub-indicators or areas in which you can focus and say, we're going to be the best in this, in this specific area, or this specific benchmark. So I think if competition was going to be used, if they wanted to use it as a form of kind of to enable or to drive performance, by opening up the scope a little bit, looking at other geographies, looking at other sectors, you can find other organizations to benchmark against.
You talked about benchmarks there, and you've talked about KPIs, so that makes me think of dashboards and data and big data. How valuable or important is the big data, let's call it revolution? How important is that to driving the innovation agenda? I mean, from a government point of view?
Well, big data is an area of intense interest in government currently. So definitely it's going to be a source of many innovations, we think, in the very near future. I don't know that I've seen big changes and big solutions coming out of big data currently. It's still more an area of interest and research rather than something that's become part of the mainstream.
Okay, so to deliver this continual improvement and measuring oneself, you don't necessarily have to have the latest technology.
Not at all, yeah.
And I guess from a manufacturing point of view, big data has this other role of optimization of your machinery and things like that.
Not only that, Richard, but also in my particular field with health and safety, for example, we have a number of statistical models. It's just not data. I think the word data, I personally don't like it. Okay. The first step is you just convert it into a piece of information, an actionable information, and then you start getting some insights from that data as, okay, this has happened or this will happen. And from there, you go one step further where you can actually have foresights. So if something happens, you can act. If you are an expert of your field and you have this large amount of data which is properly analyzed, you can actually start making prediction. For example, we are looking at our health and safety data. We can actually almost go to the departments and division and we say, look, this is the trend, this is the way it is. I think we need to have a look at that. And
can I ask on that?
Sure.
So it's my experience, and also we've had in various discussion shows about the skills required to analyze data. So you can generate data and you can create spreadsheets.
And that's why
but actually
that's not the answer.
Interpreting it is is a skill and an attitude.
It is a skill, but you also have to have proper statistical models in which you put them in, and it reveals itself what it is. For example, GE does that because we want to go from a reactive to predictive. I mean, most modern cars, and you can quote me on that, like the S-Class Mercedes, from 2003 models onwards, it can actually predict before an accident actually happens. And it can actually adjust itself. What is it relying on? It is relying on the data collected by its all sensors, how the maneuvering by the driver, how he's braking, how he's accelerating. We all in our businesses have this data available to it. And it's not just interpretation, it's taking to the next level from getting some insights, which is the yesteryear's thing, getting into the foresights.
I wonder, so Suzanne, your job title has talent management, I think, in it. So in terms of skills, where I'm driving at with this line of questioning is getting the value out of that data. Is this an area of talent shortages at the moment? I mean, how important is this?
I think when it comes to finding people who are capable of carrying out these trend analysis, there are some very set statistical models that you can go to, like Monte Carlo analysis, where even when it comes to productivity in the manufacturing environment, you can go back to exactly, as Salman says, you can take what's happened in the past and predict where the trends will move in the future. But the key for HR and for talent management, I think, is that you know where also you may have risk and how you can mitigate that risk. And with innovation, it doesn't come risk-free. And having reliable data in order to guide your decision making and in order for your employees and your leadership to guide their decision making, you can then at least take considered decisions. So when you're looking at what is that next innovation, how much investment am I going to put towards this potential groundbreaking leap innovation, you can almost have a set of predictive analysis to say, well, then my return on investment should be X amount over a period of time. But I think when it comes to talent as a whole, the talent is there, but also I think people often disregard the talent that's within their ranks and the capability of people within their ranks to learn these skills.
There is a tendency to say the grass is greener. And,
absolutely.
We're running out of time. We've got 15 minutes left. If you want to submit questions, you have 15 minutes to do so. So please get involved. I want to move on to a question that has come in, which you talked about safety, and this is from a safety manager, again at a government organisation. I haven't read the question, so I think it relates to what we're just talking about. There are so many reports about the cost of poor employee engagement. Most of the time, the main cause of this is due to lack of proper skills, knowledge, different values of line managers. When HR departments are going to be accountable of the proper for the lack of proper assessment. So this is someone on the safety side, I think, saying it's about bringing in the right talents and developing them. When are they going to be a strategic department? So when is the HR department going to be seen as a strategic department? When are they going to start gathering data for assessments? A well-designed AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be a substitute for the recruitment process. Anyway, we can see Wissam, I'll start with you because you've not had a chance to talk for a few moments. The role of HR and recruitment in developing innovation in an organisation.
I think HR is essential, and I'm sure, Suzanne, later you'll have a lot to say about that. But I mean, having the right people with the right mindset when they come into the organization, and also building the capability internally for innovation is very important. Because
and Suzanne's point, though, about in existing capacity, I mean,
yes,
presumably that is just as valuable, or is
exactly.
That
well, that's, I mean, really going back to what we were talking about earlier about the kind of innovation diploma. So whatever HR can do to build innovation capability within the different within the organization will be great. But it's about giving people, first of all, the mindset for innovation, because innovation is a lot about challenging the status quo, is about challenging the way things are done. It's about thinking outside the box, thinking creatively, and not just following, the tradition of the way things are done within an organization, but also providing the right tools. So whether it's different approaches for workshops or different tool sets or access to spaces and experts and data to allow people to innovate. It's also important, and I think HR can play a big role there.
And Suzanne, the same person that actually sent in a follow-up question asking about the use of people analytics to assess proper performance. I mean, is it?
Yeah, that's a whole area of HR that is quite up and coming in away from factory environments and manufacturing, where what you can do is you can actually look at the performance rating and KPIs of individuals, and ultimately it's looking for the productivity of individuals or teams versus the value that you're getting back. So if you are, HR analytics is very much about saying, well, if I'm investing X amount per month in salaries to the from the organization, is the organization actually getting value for money back? So if somebody is a top performer, you're probably getting very good return on investment. But how many of your employees are actually top performers? And so
well,
HR
and one top performer.
It's usually a slim layer at the top, your top performers. And then you might have a majority somewhere in the middle, and you'll have some poor performers. And the whole point of HR analytics is very much to say, well, what are we going to do about those poor performers? Because we're not getting value for money. And actually what's happening is that the people who are the top performers are having to now work harder when we could to cover almost for that poorer performance. And then what it means is that our top performers aren't focusing on the future. And that's really where the future of the organization sits, is with your top performers. So HR analytics is gaining quite a lot of strength in taking and using, again, trend analysis, which we've talked about, of past performance reviews and KPIs on individuals to see, well, actually, how are we moving forward as an organization with our return on investment?
And if, Salman, you've talked about the progress, huge progress and success at EGA from the ideas scheme and from research and development. How much of that is focused on the process of producing end product, and how much is on recruitment? I mean, is recruitment a big part of the innovation story at?
I would say, I mean, because the discussion is around what HR can do, the analytics or AI, or I think since we are in the forum of setting of innovation, I think we have to move away from these traditional definitions. Okay. What HR does for us, they will collect, they will use third-party questionnaires, so you can tell whatever you want to say in a very personal way, and nobody knows who said those comments. They collect and they play it back to the supervisor, to the superintendent, the line managers. And it's the line managers, not the HR, who find solution. For example, one of the things which we have introduced, we have taken part of the annual bonuses and we've given it to the supervisory level and say, you know what, you are working with the team all the time. And yes, there is a governance, a little bit of governance put in, and on a quarterly basis, no questions asked, they can give these monetary rewards to whoever they think has been the best performer. So here you are, where the shop floor level, the guy is thinking somewhere up in the hill, the HR, how does he know what I'm doing? To what he's directly interacting with his supervisor, and he says he's the guy in charge who's doing it on a quarterly basis. So you empower the team. And the role of the HR is collect their feelings, emotions, and what they have to say and play it back to the line manager, say, hey guys, not what I am doing about it. This is your people. These are, I mean, we do the same approach with finance, we do the same approach on safety. I don't go and give, or try not to go and give many lectures. We go to them and say, hey guys, how can we help you? You tell me what needs to be done. So we have turned it completely upside down. And I think if people are still expecting IT department to come and solve their issue, or HR department to come and solve their issue, in our view at EGA level, I think you're missing the boat. It's the line manager, they need to take
some
charge
of these old structures need to be ignored.
And we are very happy to show you how we have improved on all those levels by empowering the shop floor. They are the guys who are running the show.
how do you create that sense of urgency, or even how can you create a mindset that sees innovation as a basic need for survival? Given the situation of very low competition in our businesses, so this is coming again from the government sector. Perhaps, Wissam, if I can start with you, this goes back to where we began the conversation about why are we wanting to innovate, and it's about the being competitive.
Yes.
So in a government-dominated monopoly, how do you create that sense, that sort of, I guess it's the private sector attitude, that need to change and continually change?
Very easily. You create targets that are so ambitious that trying to achieve them with traditional tools is just impossible. I mean, Salman, you spoke earlier about your experience with Accelerator. I mean, being able to, achieve that kind of success within 100 days.
Yep.
If you were to, just to set up a project team, it'll take you 100 days. If you're going to do it, the traditional way. So, having those stretch targets, having those ambitious targets, immediately you're forced to think differently about the problem. It forces you to approach it from a different perspective, to look at new solutions, new ways of doing things. So in government, that's a very effective way of challenging teams to think differently.
And maybe again, if I can come back to Emirates Global Aluminium, I mean, you are in a competitive market, but you probably have some sense of how the government monopolies work. So is there a problem with that sense of urgency, that need to change when you're in a traditional government organisation?
I think, as I understand, the sense of urgency, because, if you look at Qatar, you're putting an impetus to do that. If that is really what the business challenge is, then by all means. But if you want to artificially create a sense of urgency, it's going to do very well in 2017. It's not going to be sustainable in 2018. You can't continuously say, there's something on fire and how are we going to do that?
You're nodding, Suzanne.
So it's not a sustainable model. Yes, if truly the markets are collapsing or something is happening, that's a different true thing, and everybody can read it in the Financial Times that this is happening. Don't just create it for the sake of creating it. Be honest, straight, and look at yourself rather than saying, these guys are not doing it. Just look at yourself as, what am I not doing?
It's an interesting point. I wonder, Suzanne, we talked about at the beginning the importance of innovation for being competitive, but is there a danger of making change for change's sake and actually damaging your business? I mean, have you seen examples of where actually, I guess there's the risk of not innovating, but then the risk of doing too much?
Yeah, I think there's always a need to ensure that you strike a good balance, you're always going to, ride waves as an organisation, but with clearly structured vision, mission, annual targets, people understanding what their own objectives are, and having a clear picture of what is expected of them, that even if there is a lot to do, I think if people understand how the size and scope of the task at hand, then people can better work a way to achieve the task. I think where organizations often may create dissatisfaction in their employees and thus lead to less productivity is when things are seemingly changing for no reason. And provided you can get the communication of these changes clear to all, and ensure that everyone is aligned from throughout the organization, that yes, a lot of organizations will have continuous incremental change, and it feels like everything's changing all the time. But we live in a very fast-paced environment now, and those who stand still will get left behind.
Absolutely.
And so we have to ensure that our employees are understanding of the fact that we are in an environment, especially in the UAE and Dubai, where things don't wait for people. You have to move forward at the pace of the environment.
Salman, when I asked the question about is there a danger of making change for change's sake, and you said absolutely. Is this something you have seen?
I have seen in some organizations which has come, they've spoken to us and they've gone back and put on their corporate dashboard this beautiful innovation, 10 of them. it's not even clear to the writer what that means. How is the management going to operationalize something which they are themselves not clear about? Innovation for innovation is a dashboard, and you were talking about, do we bring in consultants? They will give you the most beautiful dashboards which you can have on your desktop, your laptop, on your mobile, smart, and even on the car menu maybe. But what exactly is there? And that goes back to the original thing which we are a big believer in. When the leadership sets a target, they have to be personally invested in it. They're not just doing it for filling up the dashboard and making themselves look good.
You're both making the same point, aren't you?
Yeah.
There has to be a real philosophy or
it has to
belief
be purity of purpose. It has to be clarity of purpose across the organization. If it is not there, the middle management, they were going to give them this dashboard. The middle management just simply would not know how to break down into doable KPIs. It's just a sad story, and some people get stuck in this thing and saying, oh, my guys are just not innovative enough.
I mean, it's important to note also that innovation really is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself.
No, it's not.
So keeping the eye on the ball, making sure that we're always working towards what the targets are, that's really your litmus test. Is innovation and the experimentation that goes along with that, is it getting you closer to your goals? And that's where you can measure whether it's change for change's sake, or if it's real innovation that's supporting the organization's outcomes.
Okay, well, we have 2 minutes left, so I just want to go through the three of you, and I think I want to get a short view on the primary barriers. So we've talked a lot about the purpose and some of the opportunity areas around KPIs or employment. What are the barriers, from your experiences to encouraging or building a culture of innovation in organisation? Wissam, if I can start with you, where do you think are the blockages?
I think to have a really effective culture of innovation, it starts at the top. Salman, you said something that I thought really resonated earlier about how leadership can make or break innovation. Because innovation, what you're asking people to do is really to challenge the status quo, to come up with new solutions, new ways of looking at things. And so as soon as you announce that leadership is interested in innovation, everybody's going to be really wary. Are they serious about this? And then when the first few people start experimenting and actually challenging the status quo and coming up with new ways of doing things, everybody's going to be watching. Will it go through, or will the risk-taking and the potential failure that goes along with that, will it be punished? And then from there, either you create a culture that supports innovation or you stifle it. Okay,
so leadership, in one word, leadership is the thing. Suzanne, where are the barriers to innovation?
I think, to add to yourself what you've already said, but also I think often we're our own worst enemy individually. Yes. We can get into habits, especially in the workplace. The term, well, this is the way we've always done it. Yes. That's something that's just got to be thrown out the window, quite frankly, because that's not suitable for moving forward in an innovative environment. It's about allowing yourself to open and take off those blinkers and think, right, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another solution. Let's think a bit differently. And where we've really worked hard at DMCC is to try and give our line managers and individuals different ways of facilitating thought, both as an individual, but also in group environments. So when you are stuck and you think you've done everything when it comes to a brainstorming session, choose another innovation tool. Don't just stop where you think there's no other option. That's the way we've done it, we'll have to keep doing it that way. No, let's use a different tool, let's come up with something different.
I know I said I want one word answers, etc., but when you say choose a different tool, so yes. if I want to develop this, where do I find about innovation tools? What are we talking about?
So we have actually a training program on innovation, and we basically focus on 4 different tools, a matrix analysis and a force field analysis, which is very much for incremental innovation, i.e. starting where you are now and moving forward. And then we have a visioning tool and a symbol analogy tool, which is very much for starting in the future, the visioning, and working back to it being a workable approach. Now, often the tools work in collaboration with each other. You can start off with those ones of what could our most perfect picture look like, work back then using these more intricate tools to ultimately come out with an action plan. Because it's all very well having big ideas or even smaller incremental ideas, but it's about putting them into action, and that's what these tools are.
Okay, thank you. Salman, just to round off, what for you are the barriers to having a culture of innovation in an organization?
I mean, from what I've learned within EGA, how it works the best, we used to be something like a 300,000 ton smelter. Today we are almost 2.5 million ton smelter. It is a 10-time multiple. The manager, what he could do yesterday, simply cannot do that. It's very simple for us. Trust your people, empower them, listen to them, and share with them. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Well, thank you to all three of you. That brings us to the end of this edition of Mead Live. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been such a fascinating conversation with our three panellists. So I'd like to thank Wissam, Suzanne and Salman for their time and expertise. If you want to follow up on any of the topics we've touched on or get in contact with any of these organisations, please send an email to me or to Mead and we can field your questions. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you in our next broadcast. Thank you.